Welcome to another episode of Champ Talk with Branden Hudson. We are back in the building, and this is another solo episode, so sorry to disappoint that my guy Chet in here. We love Backyard Chet. He's such a great guy, but you're going to just get me today. We're going to talk about some interesting things today. This episode of Champ Talk with Branden Hudson is brought to you by God's Country Harvest. Check out my man Thomas Hornsby down in Princess Anne. He's got eggs. He's got eggs for the low. He's got beef. He's got it all. He's got chickens. You'll love the chickens. But yes, big thank you to him. Been a huge supporter for us for a long time, of mine for a long time. I've known him for going on 20 years, and just an all-around great fella. You know what I mean? But yeah, I wanted to get on here today, and I always think about, you know, what I'm going to talk about on these solo episodes and where I'm going to go with it. And I'm going to talk about a pretty important topic that I don't think it's covered as much as it should be. I don't think people talk about it as much as we would like for them to hear. I don't think people talk about it as much as we would like to hear. We kind of get these generic kind of blanket statements on what it looks like of the subject matter that we're going to go over. And, you know, you really don't get the X's and O's and get the things that people are really looking for and want to hear. So, you know, before we get into it, if you get any value from this, you know, this episode, or you know anybody that would, please share it, send it to them. Please like and subscribe our channels. You know, we always could utilize more subscriptions. That way we get pushed out to farther places on the search engines and the platforms. Additionally, leave us a testimony, leave us a review. Let us know what's going on. How did Champ Talk help you change your life, enhance your stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And all of my YouTube people that are flaming me on the comments, bro, let me know. Give me a testimony about that. I love that either way. I enjoy reading the comments. I'm not going to lie, dude, even the negative ones. But yeah, please hit the like and subscribe. We're on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Champ Talk page on Facebook, YouTube, all of it. Let's talk about fatherhood. Let's talk about what it's like to be a father in today's world and in today's society. This is going to come from some, you know, spicy topics, but, you know, you're hearing everybody talk about how these kids nowadays don't have any respect. These kids aren't, you know, this, and they're not that, and so forth. And a lot of the reasons is because they're being raised by a bunch of bitch ass dads, if they have one. You know, unfortunately, you know, if you've got a lot of bitch assness in you, and you were a bitch ass person growing up, and you were a bitch ass adult, you know what I mean? You know, then you're probably going to be a bitch ass father, right? And I'm going somewhere with this. So before you guys start going in and flaming me, you know, obviously, you know, I'm going to come with a point, but it is the truth, right? You know, how many of those people that were picked on in high school, you know, ended up getting a position of power and abused it because, you know, they were picked on? Or how many of those people that, you know, they didn't have a great example of a father. Instead of breaking the generational curse, they went off and, you know, excused themselves as being a poor example as a father. How many people didn't have a father? You know, I mean, I know, I don't know the numbers, but we know there are alarming numbers of the household where you don't have a father in the household, and that leads to the mother or the grandparents or whoever's raising these children. It leads them to trying to be dual roles and trying to be, you know, everything. And, you know, statistically speaking, we know that children with fathers in the picture succeed at a higher rate than children without it, right? And I'm not coming at anybody here other than the piece of shit fathers, right? I'm not coming at no mother that's doing her busting her ass to make it happen. I'm not saying, you know, this role, that role. We're going to just talk to fathers today and how there's a huge disconnect on what you think the example of a father should be. And I'm going to go with some backstory. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on my life, you know? So, you know, my mother and my biological father were, you know, dating in high school, fresh out of high school. You know, my mother got pregnant. They were very young, you know, I think in the teens. My mom was 18. You know, I think, you know, Terry was around 16. And I get bits and pieces. I've gotten things that I've known growing up, but you know what I mean? There's always, you know, her story, his story, the truth, and all that. One thing I want to be clear is there's no bitterness at all in any of it. Everything worked out exactly how it should. And I'll get further down the road as to where things are. But needless to say, you know what I mean? This was 1980, 1981, when I was born. And, my mom and my biological father didn't see eye to eye. And my mom decided to, she was out. And that's just the way my mom rolled. My mom didn't play no games. She wasn't going to be back and forth, playing no games. If you were either 100% in or 100% out. And at that time, my biological father being young and in his teens, probably still in high school. I think he was in a band. I mean, it's all the story. What 16-year-old or even 18-year-old person knows how to make a just decision when you're coming up in this world, right? So for whatever reason, that didn't work out. And, this was pre-internet days. This was before you could look anybody up or find out where anybody lived. You had to have an actual phone book or hit the operator button, 0, to get in touch with people. And, at the end of the day, that's the decision my mom chose. She said, I'll do this on my own. Shortly after, I think about 6 months after, she met my biological father, my dad, Joe. And that's whose last name I share. And, basically they fell in love. And, my dad, I think, was either back from the military or, kind of in a leave or something like that. My dad was my dad was a Rolling Stone as well. He's a wild boy. But, at the end of the day, she dated and story be told he was like, hey, when you gonna let me see the kid? I smell him on you. Right. So fell in love with me, moved my mom into his mom's house, adopted me shortly after they got married. And that's all I've ever known, right? I've never known another person in my life other than my father, Joe. And there was never what are they called? Like, there was never like a relationship there. I never knew who, Terry was at that time until about 8 years old. My grandmother decided to tell me. And even then, I'm a little boy. I have no clue about what it is and none of it. But as I was growing up, I did have questions. And as I got older, I did have questions and thoughts and things like that. And, my dad, Joe, did a great, phenomenal job. You know what I mean? And I only say their first names so you can have context. You know what I mean? So he did a great job with us. My household was filled with a lot of love. My parents supported. They worked their asses off. We grew up with humble beginnings. And, we just grew up with a lot of love and grew up with dysfunction. And we grew up with, wins, losses, and all that. And fast forward, I was 18 years old when me and my ex-wife were messing around. We were just friends with benefits at the time, like a lot of young people are. And, she was pregnant. She had just had Tiaja, who then was my godchild, but now is fast forward, is my daughter. And, Tiaja was my godchild. That's my oldest daughter. And, me and Holly were friends with benefits, hooking up, all that stuff again that people do. And she ended up getting pregnant as well. And she was clear that, it's a possibility that you wasn't mine. We weren't together. There was no, you know what I mean? We're living wild, young, wild, crazy kids living on the Eastern Shore. And, as we went further down the process, of course, when I first heard it, I'm like, it ain't mine. Just like any other, 18-year-old would be or whatever, most of us. But as we got going on with the pregnancy and stuff like that, Holly and I were very good friends. We always have been friends, you know what I mean, before and after the marriage. As we got going on, I didn't want to be the douchebag that didn't get to see my kid being born. You know what I mean? So I was there at the birth, and both of their fathers weren't in the picture at all. So there was no like battling over who was who or what was what. Holly's been a good friend of mine forever, and she will remain family forever. She's a part of my future plans, no matter what, because she's always been there. And anyway, my daughter was born, and when I looked at her, she looked red to me. You know what I mean? Like, she was red, she was crying, she had a head full of hair. I don't know if it was because I saw a miracle. I don't know if it's because this is what my dad did for me. I don't know what at that moment, all I know is I saw this beautiful baby. I thought she was mine, put my name on a birth certificate, and let's rock with it. And that's my middle daughter, Taylor. So a couple of months, obviously, she's starting to darken up. She's biracial, so clearly wasn't mine. You know what I mean? Biracial, but I've been taking care of this child since the beginning. And I was a dad that I had my kid every weekend from Friday to Sunday and every other Wednesday, right? So, I've never paid child support. Holly and I always have had the interests of our children first. And that's just what it was. I'm this young 19-year-old kid, living with two other bachelors with this little teeny baby that's coming to my house, and about 3-4 months later, I'm like, clearly I didn't make her. And it was a little bit of a challenging spot because, everybody in their world was telling me, you should be taking care of somebody else's kid. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like, dude, I made a man's decision. Even though I'm a young kid, I made a man's decision. I followed through with that man's decision. And for me, I fell in love with the kid. I fell in love with her. She was mine. And it didn't matter if I didn't make her or not. This is who I become. And I had all these women that, had all this shit to say about how Holly tricked me and I was stupid and all that. And all of that was clearly lies. None of that was remotely close to the truth. But of course, all these women that were saying this shit now have, 3 or 4 kids with 3 or 4 baby daddies. Ironic enough, they had a bunch of shit to say. Anyway, fast forward, that was a decision. I didn't look back. I kept moving forward, and Taylor was mine. Now, mind you, I'm also, selling drugs, living in the streets, not living in them, but heavily in the streets, doing wild boy shit, just all over the place, man. Like just a certified gangster in these times. And, as the time went by, I saw that, Tiaja was, I'd come pick up Taylor and things like that. And what happened was Holly worked out of town on the weekends. So my oldest daughter, which at that point was my goddaughter, would go to her grandparents' house and, Taylor would come to my house. And it was very, it weighed heavy on my heart because it wasn't like I just dismissed Tiaja as because I wasn't her father, but it was just like it was awkward. It was weird for the first year or so where Tiaja would kind of be confused that Taylor's got a dad and she really didn't have one, and she'd go to the grandparents and basically, over a little bit of period of time, I was just like, just send her with me. She can come with me on the weekends. Bring her with her sister. I'll take care of both of them. Gosh, thank God to my mom. Thank God to my brother. Thank God to people that have helped me out along the ways because Lord knows I had no clue of what the fuck I was doing being a father. Of course, then I knew everything, but now looking back on it, especially with my young son Tyrion and my dynamic now, it's like, Jesus, man, I hit the mark so much. And even to my ex-wife Holly, man, I just really hit the mark on a lot of things on, how of a husband I was to her, how of a, support system, father, all of these things, and it's just my story. You know what I mean? I can't live in remorse about it. I can certainly acknowledge and say that, I'm forever sorry for the way that things have I responded and handled myself to her and to the kids. But again, I was a baby raising babies, so I had to figure it all out as I was going. And thank God I had the help that I did. But I'm giving you context. I promise you I'm going somewhere with this story. So, at that point, I'm getting both the girls every weekend and every other Wednesday. And, me and Holly decided to give it a shot. And, you know what I mean? We decided to that's what happens. We would always come back to each other and find each other through these in-between phases of when we weren't dating. And we decided to give it a shot. And, we gave our hand at marriage, and I ended up having Trinity, all right, my third daughter, right? And, at the end of the day, no regrets. Well, there's a bunch of things I wish I would have and should have done differently, especially being a representation of a man and a husband and a father and all the things. But, when you're in that life, you just don't understand necessarily. You don't really, I don't think it's understand. I don't think you have the insight to see how you're supposed to act and behave, right? There was just a lot of things I should have and could have done a lot better. But that's our journey, and that's where we went. And Holly and I, we gave it a good old college try, but we ended up divorcing, and even from that point on, her and I, we threw a couple stones at each other, and we had some moments, but overall, we remained what was best for the girls, right? She has a completely different parenting style than I do. She pisses me off, or she would piss me off almost on a weekly basis. I'm sure I pissed her off on a weekly basis as well. But the one thing we didn't do is we'd never let the kids suffer. We never let our egos get the best of us. I know for me, I definitely could have shut my mouth a lot more times when I thought I was venting about their mother, opposed to, what I should have done. It just should have been quiet. But again, these are mistakes that I'm trying to help you prevent and trying to help you understand, fathers, that it's better to act a certain way than fall to your natural instinctive reactions. But overall, her and I had the same mindset. We were going to do what's best for the kids. And she's been a great role in my life, great person in my life. She's, her, my wife get along awesome. We all get along it's just it's a great dynamic. And I'm telling you all this because not that I want any kind of flowers for taking care of these kids, right? Or raising my daughters, right? These girls saved my life. I didn't save their life. They saved my life, right? These girls gave me an ability to have a governor on some of my behavior. I was so fucking wild and reckless that I really didn't have no limits to how far I would take it in the streets, right? And it was the thought that they relied on me and that I had kids was what really made me kind of put a halt on some of the actions that I wanted to do and could have done and maybe even at times should have done. And it saved me from making those fatal mistakes of, potentially getting killed or potentially killing somebody or, going to prison for a long time amidst all the other dumb shit I was doing at the moment and at the time. And so, this isn't about Branden and how, he did this because, again, it's just what you do, in my opinion. And this is the first lesson of what we're talking about. When you're a man and you decide to take care of a child or make a child, there is no more negotiation when it comes to what you want to do and what your life is playing out to be. At that point, you have a responsibility and a duty to not only just provide for those children, but you have a responsibility, you have a duty to provide the best possible outcomes that you can possibly provide so that they have a fucking chance. You don't just sit here and say, I'm putting a roof over your head and I'm feeding you and I'm clothing you and I'm taking you to your ball games and I'm doing, you have to provide an opportunity, many opportunities for these children to be able to become productive members of society, for these kids to be able to take what they've grown up and saw and learned and pulled in everything that they've seen and heard and experienced so that they can take that with whatever opportunity they have and be productive members of society, be good people. Just because you made a child and just because you throw money at that child or you show up and you're not present, that's not fatherhood. I'm sorry. And I don't give a fuck who I piss off about this. Because I'll tell you one thing, I have the fucking receipts on this one. This one I can talk about with pure confidence because I have a crazy dynamic of fatherhood right now where, you know what I mean? I didn't have to do none of that. And the other side of it is I never felt like I had to. I never felt like I was pulled to having to take care of these girls once I decided I was going to be their father. This was something that was just, it was a part of things. It was what it was. I get these, these people be like, oh my gosh, it was so nice of you to do what you, no, it's not fucking nice of me to take care of my kids. It's what the fuck you do. It's not, you don't get pats on the back. You don't get credit for being a good father. You just fucking take care of your children. That's it. And when I say about this, when I started this off with this bitch assness, like where you have these, these examples of fathers, you see the kids with lack of respect. You see the kids that don't really have a lot of entitlement, don't really have any code or respect for authority. Well, it's because their fathers didn't. If they have the father in play, their fathers allowed some sort of bitch asses to go on in the house, right? Like if their fathers talk to their mother a certain way, then they're going to talk to other women and other people a certain way, right? Ed Milet says this. Patrick Bet David said this. A lot of people I respect say this. Behavior's caught, not taught. So what your children see and catch on the interim of growing up in a household and how you respond is the way that they're going to be. You got all these, you got a lot of fathers that are bitter because their ex-wife or their baby mom or whoever did this and did that, and they want to play hostage with the kid. Hey, if you don't do this, I'm not going to do that for our son or our daughter. If you don't do this, I'm not going to do that for this game or for whatever, right? You're playing hostage with a kid because your ego's hurt and your ego's bruised, right? That child didn't ask for none of that. That child didn't ask for. That child don't give a shit about y'all's ego. And there's a lot of there's a lot of bad women out here. Like women all the time get a pass so much. It's always the men's fault, right? There's a lot of bad women out here. There's a lot of bad people out here, but there's a lot of bad women out here too, right? And there's a lot of women that are very spiteful and vindictive, and these women will do whatever they have to do to make sure that you're in a bad position if you've hurt them or done whatever. And men, it's not your responsibility when you're a father to beat the woman. I don't mean beat physically. I mean beat him in war, beat him in whatever it is that you're competing about. You're fucking killing any chances of your children behaving differently than what you're showing them at the time. And most of the shit that people think that they're doing, especially men, that they think that they're doing because their kids don't see it, they act like their kids don't know it. The mother's telling them everything that's going on, brother. They're seeing and feeling all the uncomfort, all the awkwardness, they know the tension. They can sense the tension, right? So that's one thing. Leave your fucking ego at home. You do what's best for the children. And look, there's a lot of shit that's just unfair, right? There's a lot of shit that's just unfair. You're going to have moments in your life where you're just not going to get the long end of the stick. But that's not your child's fault. And you trying to play this, I'm going to one up my baby mom or my ex-wife so that I can do this. And that's selfish. That's not being selfless. That's selfish because your ego's bruised, because you're trying to sit here and one up something that has nothing to do with your child and the way that they live. Now, this isn't the rule. This is a standard, or this is the standard. It isn't the rule. I'm not saying that there's not a chance that there could be a situation, but I would say 9 times out of 10, when you men feel that you got to go at your baby mama, your ex-wife, and some back and forth bullshit, you're wrong. You're wrong, because it ain't going to benefit the child. The other thing that gets me with fatherhood is this lack of example that you're setting. You think just because you work hard and you can buy things and that you show up, you think that that's an example that fits the role of a exceptional father. Notice I didn't say good father, great father. I said exceptional father. In my opinion, I need to be an exceptional father. I've made many mistakes throughout the course of my fatherhood journey, right? But my fatherhood journey doesn't stop when my kids turn 18, right? There's different phases and levels to being a father, right? There's different seasons. There's different versions of when your children need you. And even if your children are in their late teens and 20s where maybe they don't need you as much as it feels and seems, they still need you. One of the lessons I learned with my kids in their 20s is they need their dad more than they've ever needed them. What they don't need is they don't need their dad telling them how to live life. They don't need their dad telling them what to do. They just need their dad there. They just need to have a soundboard. They need to just let some of this stuff up because they're still very, very sensitive, emotional, passionate creatures because they're only in their 20s. Remember when y'all were in y'all 20s? Man, everything mattered. It was life or death. We were trying to prove the world that we were grown up. We were trying to do all the things that we needed to do to start this new life, right? And then we got in our 30s and some of us in our 40s, we were like, geez, man, I missed the mark. I should have probably experienced life more, right? So life doesn't stop just because they turn 18. As fatherhood doesn't stop just because they turn 18. It's a different version, different season, right? So you need to be an exceptional father. Meaning you need to understand your situational awareness in the moment of time that you're being a father. And also being a father is not being your fucking friends. Most of you a lot of you dads out there are trying to be people's friends and trying to get acceptance and trying to have, I got a homeboy who's going through some shit where he's looking at this baby daddy, that's trying to be the cool dad, right? He wants to be the cool dad so that he can one up everybody. You know what I mean? Not understanding he's creating a fucking monster on his hand. His kid is out of control, you know what I mean? Very disrespectful, right? Not following through with any kind of structure, not following with any kind of routine that reflects that there's a dynamic that's balanced. It's like, here, have whatever you want. Hey, do whatever you want. Yeah. You know what I mean? Your mom, she ain't this. Your mom, she ain't that. Da 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 da. And it's creating a monster, right? The baby daddy don't see it because he's never been there. He's on uncharted territory. Excuse me. English is hard. But everybody else in the world can see it. Everybody else can see how this child is behaving, inappropriately and disrespectfully, and can see where this is going, right? So you don't need to be the child's friend or be the favorite parent. You can be disliked, right? You can be the parent that has to have structure. And then on the flip side of that, you don't got to be so fucking hard on your kids. Man, I see these parents. We've had parents come into the gym that literally are fucking assholes. Just straight up assholes. They'll sit there and they'll yell at their kid about how they are or aren't performing. They'll get emotional when the kid's doing class or competing against another kid. Show their ass on how they act. Like fucking make loud noises, start hitting shit. Like ridiculous. Like I've had to have a conversation with multiple parents numerous times because they think like jujitsu or karate or kickboxing or boxing, they think that's a sport like, soccer and football where, your parent's supposed to be involved. No. It's the coach's responsibility. Parent, you need to be a soft pillow. That kid knows what they're going through right now. But I've had parents show their ass, you know what I mean? But yet never take a class 1 with us. They're the type of people like, well, if I see red, you ain't doing shit, buddy. You know what I mean? Take a class, get smashed underneath one of my guys, right? I guarantee you, while you're yelling at your son or your daughter to try to get up from the bottom of another boy or girl smashing them in jiu-jitsu class, I guarantee you they are trying their hardest to get up. They don't need your fucking mouth of someone who don't know anything screaming and hollering. We had a parent come in one time, kid's like 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old. My kid will do whatever I tell him to do. Do push-ups right now, son. It's fucking 4. Like, what kind of bullshit military fucking bullshit trauma are you dealing with, dude, that you think that that's okay to talk to your kid like that and make your kid? Matter of fact, when do you think that even remotely looks cool in front of other people? Like, other dads are watching you, dude, as you make your kid do push-ups at 4 years old because they didn't listen or whatever, and they're like, what a jackass. But that's the part of being exceptional. And I'm saying, look, give yourself grace. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss the mark. But what are you trying to create here? Because I know one thing. The more I try to control my kids, the more that did not work. The more I was just supportive and listening, and I have tough conversations with them. I do tell them when they're not doing things right, when they are doing things wrong. We do have the dialogue, right? But what I want more importantly is I want my kids to be able to come to me and know that they're going to get the truth and that they can tell me anything, absolutely anything. I made many mistakes being so protective. It got to a point where if my kids were done wrong or somebody did something where I had to have their back and jump to protect them, that my kids were so scared that their dad was going to kill that person that they wouldn't even tell me what was going on. And it's because of my own actions. It's because I'd wild out and, slap somebody up because, they jumped out on my daughter, or I'd go do something like this or something like that, right? Because, you hurt my daughter, right? And, yes, there's a level of you have to be protective and you have to have your kids' backs. There's also a level of, am I trying to risk everything? So I'm going to say something that's going to be very, very sensitive here, but, the unfortunate side of like abuse, you know what I mean? And when children are abused, especially if they're, like sexually abused or something like that, you hear a lot of cases, you read a lot of cases where the abuser threatened that they were going to do something to the kid's parents or something like that. And that's how they were able to, keep the child silent. And it's such an awful thing, the worst thing ever. And, I apologize for getting so graphic on this, but, this is something that happens, right? And just like me, and I think a lot of fathers would agree, God forbid, my heart goes out to anybody who's had to deal with this or had to experience this on any kind of level, whether you were the parent, you were a friend, you were the abused, anything, right? My heart goes out to you because that is not right. It's the word thing I don't think there's any rehabilitation for. There's no rehabilitation for someone who violates somebody's rights like that and man or womanhood. There's no rehabilitation for that. But you hear cases where the abuser would manipulate the child and say they were going to hurt their parents. And just like me and like any other father, I'm sure that if that happened, you would fucking kill them, right? We would go kill that person. And I mean, in my opinion, I think they should die. I don't think they should live. There is no rehabilitation. There is no accidental doing something like that to a child. That's not an accident. That's something you don't come back from, in my opinion, right? People can feel differently about how that feels. That's fine. My belief structure, my opinion on my fucking podcast says, nah, that ain't the play, dog. But think about this. Think if the God forbid the worst happened, and you go out there and you do kill that person. Now your child not only goes through that horrific experience, but now they lost their father. And you might think that that was just because that's how you felt, but now they lost their father. You're in prison for the rest of your life. You know, maybe if you weren't a very good father, maybe if you didn't have anything to offer and you were never there, maybe that would be okay. I don't know. I'm not the one to say yes or no to that. But if you're any kind of father that's in the child's life, unfortunately, and as bad as this sounds, the child would choose to be abused most of the time, every time, 9 times out of 10. I don't know the statistic, but I would say the child would choose that over losing one of their parents. And again, I don't mean to be so graphic, and so it's just something to get your mind thinking. Like, as parents, we think we want to, as men, fathers, we think we want to run to the bat. You know, I got to kill, but that scares your kids. Because they're so worried about losing you. They're so worried about how far you're going to take it. And I've been guilty of that. I've made that mistake many times where I took it way too fucking far, and it didn't serve anybody. It didn't make any sense, right? It only made the situation worse. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't defend your kids, and I'm not, just track with me. You know what I mean? Like, don't dissect my points that I'm trying to make to a degree where it makes no sense. Yes, you should always be able to defend your family, defend your kids. And yes, there is a time and place, you know, but what I'm trying to say is being the parent where your kids have to fear you, whether they fear you in a way of how bad it could get or whether they fear how bad you'd react, I don't think builds trust. I think there should be a level of fear with kids in an early toddler stage, but a healthier version. In other words, they should know that there's consequences, and they should fear the consequences because their dad will follow through. You know, I don't think they should fear you as a man, but they should fear the consequences. You know, if my son ever hit my wife, he better fear me at that moment because there's consequences to the actions. If you ever hit your mother or any woman in that matter, you're going to have consequences, right? But again, how far you want to take it? What are you willing to throw away and lose just by your instinctual, I got to defend my kid's honor and all that stuff? It's just, it's a bad look in my opinion. Another thing that, you know, why I wanted to talk about my upbringing, the cool thing about where I'm at now with my situation is around 23, I started having curiosities, and I was wondering who Terry was. You know, I knew I got things from my mom. I knew I got things from my dad, but then there was these traits that I just didn't understand and explain. So I searched him out and I met him, and I caught him off guard. He was playing in the band, and just introduced myself, and I didn't want anything from him. I wasn't better. Just figured he needed to know I was there, and I needed to know I was here. And I was kind of pushed from my uncle, and a lot of curiosities. I grew up and things like that. You know, well, that was almost 20 years ago, and in the course of that time frame, Terry and I have made a really good relationship. You know what I mean? Like he's my biological father. You know, he made me. He's made a hell of an effort to be a part of my life. He's never once stepped on the toes of my father, Joe. And he's never once said, "Hey, it's just a very organic relationship." And it took a lot of time. It took 20 years. It took, you know what I mean? It took patience, you know, and I got a huge ego. So for me, it'd take one or two things. You're out of my life, motherfucker. I don't give a fuck about anybody when it comes to you. You know, I'm damaged good, baby. So you hurt me, we're done, right? But we've built a good relationship. You know what I mean? I've got a little brother and actually a couple brothers and a sister and things that I didn't know about. And it's cool. I don't know if it's right. I don't know if it's wrong. I don't give a fuck. It's cool. It's my life. It's the way I want. My father, Joe, is completely supportive. You know, my dad knows, his role and my last name. And, it's just cool. It's really cool. You know what I mean? And I love my father. You know, Joe Hutz is my dad. He's the man that raised me, made me who I am. And I love Terry. You know what I mean? He's the man that made me. And, you know, we're building a great relationship now. So for me, it's like you can't go wrong if you got multiple people in your life that care about you. And I had to have that conversation with my oldest daughter when, you know, her biological father started coming into the picture and you know, when she was 16 years old and started, you know, poking around on Facebook and stuff like that. I couldn't be this guy like, well, fucking how dare you? You can't see him. I told her straight up, if he hurts you, it's his ass. If he hurts you, that's his ass. But I'm not going to sit here and deny you of wanting to have those questions. I had the same as myself. And I think today, in today's world, you know, the family dynamic and the blended family is so, you know, there's no really limitations on what it looks like nowadays, right? You know, you have adoption, you have situations like mine, you have all kinds of situations, right? The one thing that we know, this is the one thing that we know no matter how your situation is designed. You'll never go wrong being a fucking good father to a child. No matter if you made that child or not, you'll never go wrong with being a good father. Never. And you can say good father, that's subjective. Being a good father is what you make out to be a good father. You know, I think being an exceptional father is my outcome. But there's a lot of fathers that are truly are not capable of being a touchy-feely kind of dad because they didn't get that or they had some trauma, whatever. And that's okay. You know, is just being there, man, is way better than not. And I can't imagine not being able, excuse me, let me back up. I can't imagine knowing that my bloodline is out there somewhere, that I made somebody and that they have nothing to do with me or I have nothing to do with them. I can't imagine that feeling. You motherfuckers that ain't taking care of your fucking kids, you are pieces of shit. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't give a fuck what you've done in your life. Even if you are a bitch ass motherfucker, you can still be a bitch ass motherfucker and take care of your child. I could never fathom knowing my son is out there and I chose not to be in my child's life. That to me is the low of all lows. But when you just want to be a good father or just be a great father or be an exceptional father, that's subjective. You can set that standard however you want. Just being there alone is so incredible. So incredible. My brother is probably one of the best dads I've ever met. My brother is, actually all my brothers, they're incredible brothers. They're incredible fathers. They're better fathers than I am. That's what I think. These guys, I learned from my younger brothers how to be a good father because of how much love, time, effort, you know, they just pushed so much for them. And it is so cool to watch that, right? It's so cool to see that. And they've had adversities of their own. They've had situations where we've had it all, man. I'm not going to put their business out there. We've had it all. And they're just exceptional human beings. And I learn from them every day. And I think that's another part of fatherhood that's really overlooked is having that white belt mentality, learning every day how to be better and how to do things betterly and striving and going and looking for that knowledge to be a better father, doing things what we had differently. You know, my family were a great family, but I'm always wanting to do better than them. And I want my kids to do better than me. You know, and then when you have sons, men, you have to create leaders. You have to create responsible people that are productive members of society that are starting and leading families of their own. We will be bound to these children when they grow up and we're elderly and old and there are leaders. It's going to happen. It's the seasons of life. And I think that people overcomplicate what's important. Another mistake I used to make was I thought that I had to spend all this money and have these great big trips and prizes and toys and extravagancies that, you know, made me such a great father with my girls. And really something as simple as picking blueberries at the blueberry patch for $10 was like the greatest thing on earth to them. Just sitting around and playing in the backyard, reading books with them, talking to them, listening. You know what I mean? There's so many things that I missed the mark on being a young father and trying to figure it all out. That, you know, now being, you know, a more seasoned father and grandfather at this point, It's like, wow, these little things go so far for these kids. They just, it hits the mark because they love experience. Everything's an adventure. They don't know how much that toy costs. They don't know how much that trip costs. And 9 times out of 10, you take them on a trip, or you take them to a place, they bitch and complain about something anyway. They throw a temper tantrum about something anyway, right? But in all, I could go on and on about many different things about fatherhood and examples. The meat and potatoes about it all is first of all, you got to be there. You got to be there, and you got to be in the picture, and you got to be present. Sitting on the sofa watching your favorite Netflix show and scrolling Instagram and Facebook while your kid's running around, that's not very present. And we all make the mistake. We all have done it. And I'm not saying like you have to be on. My wife kills me because she's like her only child, right? Our son. I mean, she's like on every minute. I'm like, no wonder why he doesn't want to leave your freaking side. You're his personal friend, assistant, guide. So I mean, get the boy some boundaries. Tell him go play. Figure it out. But at the same time, you know what I mean? Like my kid, he feels loved, and for fathers, we've all played victim, we've all fell short by looking at Instagram or not being attentive, but you got to be there. You got to be attentive to your kid. And you got to start building out some structure and some plans for your children. Like, you don't have to be me or anybody else. And I don't think I'm the greatest father in the world. I'm striving to be an exceptional father. But you have to build out roadmaps, man. You have to be able to have strategies and vision for what's down the road for your children. And sometimes we just kind of get caught up and take it for granted that they're always going to be young and they're always going to be this toddler, this child, this age. And then seasons come, man. Seasons come. And my mom, she had a hard time letting go of the youth Branden versus the, teenage and adult Branden, right? And she struggled with that along because she was so used to being so needed and being, so in everybody's stuff and the general, the man. I mean, she had it all together. She planned her lunches, dinners, lives, everything, food, clothing, all of it. So, when that season's over, it's a hard thing to be. So you have to have structure and you have to have a vision of where your child and children are going to go and how you're going to prepare for the next season. And you got to make your kids do the hard things. As men, it's your responsibility. Fathers, your responsibility to make your children do the hard things within reason. You don't have to be a fucking asshole about how you're disciplining them or how you're trying to set this example. They're just kids. There's no such thing as a bad kid. They're just figuring it out. They're just trying to have a childhood experience, right? And that's such a short amount of time in the grand scheme of life, right? You think about your life, and you think about how short your childhood was and how fast it went by. And think about all the things that you saw, the great memories, the bad memories, the trauma. Like, they need to have that experience and enjoy that experience, but they also need to learn what hard things are and start preparing them for the world. And the world, if you paint the world as a awful, scary place, if you paint the world as this place that is doom and gloom, I believe you're going to get doom and gloom. I believe that's the world that you're going to ask and invite and be subjective to. But if you paint the world of this amazing experience, this beautiful, abundant living with pain, with sorrows, with struggles, with suffrage, then I believe that you're going to attract that as well. And you're going to be able to get an abundance mindset, and you're going to be able to get the lives that you want and the life that you want and be with the people that you want to be with and become the versions that you want to become. So as men, and as fathers, give them that experience. Give them that experience, but also teach them the tough things and prepare them for the hard things so that when it does happen, because it will happen, that they're not rocked and rattled and they know how to fight back. I plead with you men out there, and I plead with you fathers out there. Right now is a critical time for us to really step up and be the leaders that we want to see. And it doesn't mean you have to have it all figured out, and it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It just means you have to strive to be exceptional, become an exceptional father. The world needs fathers. The world needs that dynamic, that structure. And I love how many men are stepping up that are becoming that or being that and that are setting that example right now. There's a really big swing that I think and I'm seeing of people and men that are stepping up into that role. But there's also a big gap right there that needs to be filled. And I think it's our time right now, men and fathers, to fill that role and be the best that we can be, and latch on to other men and other fathers, and stop trying to one up everybody and start learning from everybody. It takes a village to raise these children. And I think that if we add more of a village mentality and a more unified mentality, I think that we can produce the greatest leaders of our time. I think that we all can agree that the last 10 years have just been very weird. It's just been weird, right? No matter what you believe in or where you're at, things have been kind of weird, right? And I think that there's a lot of us that don't want to get out on social media, don't want to get out on the public, don't want to draw too much attention to ourselves because of all this weirdness. But I think we all get it, and we're all just saying, you know what, I'm going to focus on governing and leading my household like it should be. And I'm going to focus on trying to raise my kids with respect and with all of the good things that we know that work in life. And I think there's a lot of us that are kind of banding together because like attracts like. And I think that other men and other families and fathers are seeing other men and other family and fathers and business owners and so forth. And we're starting to attract each other, and we're starting to get a little bit more sticky within our groups and with our villages. And I think that we're all starting to feel this. And I think, and I believe, because I'm very optimistic, I believe that we are going to produce some of the greatest leaders that this world has ever seen. I think that they're going to write history books like we read with these leaders that we produce, these men and women that us fathers are going to help raise and help produce. I would love to say it's going to be me and the guys and gals that are my age. I wish it was, but I think we're too attached to the old and the new, and we're not that. Unfortunately, we're not that. There's a place from like 78 to 83, they're calling us Gen Xennials, where we were old enough to see streetlights and drink from hoses, but young enough to see technology. And we just don't fit that Gen X, that millennial. We're just right in the middle. I wish it was us, and I would love to say it's going to be us, and it's not. We're going to foster those leaders. We're going to be the ones that are going to provide these values and these structures and these things for these young leaders to come up, and it's going to fucking rewrite history. So fathers, step up. Step into this role, become that leader, become that mentor, that example that these new future leaders need, so that we can start fixing things and start getting things just a little less weird than what they've been. Guys, I hope you got value from this Champ Talk. I wanted to go deep and talk about my experience. I hope this helped you and impacted you. And if you know somebody that this would impact, please share this episode. Send it over to them. Let them see it. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. Give me a testimony. Give me a review. Tell me about what you thought about this. Good, bad, or indifferent. Push back. Tell me what you feel. I know putting myself out here opens myself up to criticism and opens myself to the feedback. I welcome it. I would love to talk to anybody about anything. But that'll wrap up this episode of Champ Talk with Branden Hudson. Please go to our pages. I hope you guys got value. What are you doing today to become a champion?